Today's show is brought to you by TraderCobb.com. Visit TraderCobb.com to go visit and join up to our free bi-weekly video newsletter. In the newsletter, you'll get 2 emails per week with content about the markets, scans, often heads-up calls, and you can meet my apprentices. Join the website now and find out more about how you can get a structured trading approach and attack the markets with an idea of what you're doing. Join TraderCobb.com now.
Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast. This is the Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. Today I have with us Henrik Andersson, who's the CIO of Apollo Capital, which is an Australian crypto fund. I've met Henrik and shared a panel with him in Sydney not too long ago, and I'm really interested to go into some detail about what's going on within this space and how they are seeing the whole crypto asset sphere transform. So Henrik, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Craig.
Excellent. So look, I've done you no justice in the introduction. If you wouldn't mind just taking the listeners through a little bit about your background and how you've come to where you are, that'd be fantastic.
Well, my background is in traditional finance. So I spent around 20 years in traditional financial markets, in institutional equities, back in my home country of Sweden and in Asia. And I did 10 years in New York in the equities and the quant space. And I got really interested in crypto and cryptocurrencies around 5 years ago. Started a little company in Singapore at the time, moved to Melbourne a couple of years ago. And our fund really grew out of an increased realization that the whole crypto space is becoming a new asset class for investors. And we are meeting many investors who want an exposure. So that's why we decided to set up a fund. We thought a hedge fund or an actively managed fund is the best way for people to get exposure. Still very hard for investors, I think, to get exposure to this new asset class. Is still quite early on, and things like security and custody, tax, etc., are I think really hard things for people to get their heads around. And we are trying to solve all those issues, and we have 3 investment professionals here that actively manage a portfolio of what we call crypto assets. And I think we have a good combination of backgrounds from traditional finance, from being in the crypto markets for a long time, and from venture capital investments. So I think the space is so interesting as well because it's kind of in the intersection of so many different fields, and that makes it really interesting.
Well, I can't argue with that. It's certainly an interesting space, fast-paced space, lots going. I mean, the question has to be asked. I mean, this market this year so far has look. It's been fine if you're active, if you're using margin and you're trading it. It's been a little bit more challenging if you're more of an investor. Now, how have you guys found this year? Now, drawdowns are a part of being an investor, part of being a trader. And like yourself, I'm sure, so like myself, I'm sure you guys are very much bullish long-term on the space and the industry itself. But how have you guys fared this year compared to how the market has kind of taken a bit of a hit throughout the first half of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a difficult market. We are long-term bullish as well. We have seen this kind of markets, I think, in the short history of the crypto space several times. It's sort of been repeated, this kind of hype cycle that we saw last year. People get maybe a bit too excited, but at one point they realize it takes longer to build these technologies than maybe you first hope for. So people realize maybe prices are a bit too high and they come back down. But I think each of these cycles we end up at a higher kind of level where we were before. So if you look at the market in the beginning of 2017, I think the whole crypto markets were at 16-17 billion. So we are very far above that market. Personally, I think we have seen the bottom in the Bitcoin prices specifically. I think visited 5,800 first week of February. I think we revisited that kind of level end of June as well, if I'm not mistaken. And now we're sitting at 6,500 or so in Bitcoin in US dollar terms. I think the news has just been so good if you look at the fundamental news this year. So I think for some of the coins we've probably seen the bottom. For many other coins, there's probably far to go on the downside still. That's our view. My view is that we will probably see an ETF in the US within 6 months or so. I think that's very likely. I actually had a chat with someone from CBOE this morning. They're working on new products as well. And I think the whole space is actually changing very quickly. I mean, this year we've had tremendous news actually from the likes of Goldman Sachs saying that they're starting a cryptocurrency desk trading, forwards and futures for their clients. I think Morgan Stanley and Barclays are looking at that as well. They've had Fidelity, integrating it at one point with Coinbase, and they're working on some products as well. They've had, large banks like Nomura in Japan working on custody solutions. We have, and most recently ICE, the owner of New York Stock Exchange, saying that they are opening a new platform later this year. So I think the fundamental news has actually been really good, but prices just got ahead of themselves at the end of last year. And we are trying to invest for the long term. It's been a really difficult market, but I think there are still very interesting projects out there. You just have to know what you're investing in and do the due diligence, I think. But I think it's been difficult for everyone. And like most funds, we are mostly long the markets, but I think our investors understand as well that they see the long-term opportunity. We haven't seen any redemptions or anything like that. Actually, the opposite. We have had applications throughout this bear market. We have an open-ended fund with monthly applications. And I think they see this as a good time to invest as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have definitely seen a lot of pullback, and I mean, on the monthly chart, when I look at it on a technical trader, I come back and look at the point at which we were overextended, and anybody who thinks that markets continue to go up at the rapid pace that we saw through sort of November, December last year has not been around long enough. They just have no real grasp of reality. Is probably the best way of putting it. It's just not the way things work out. So we know that there's definitely a lot coming into the space as far as new projects. Now, is there any, sector within the space that you guys see there to be a huge opportunity at the moment? Like, I mean, we've seen a lot of energy plays. We've seen a lot of banking plays. We've seen a lot of different plays coming in. Is there any one area at the moment that you guys are sort of focused on, or anything you think sort of overexposed a little bit?
So we are investing in some of those verticals that you mentioned. Probably energy is not one of them, but we see really a new web being built, a new decentralized web 3.0, if you like. And we think there will be some core infrastructure needed in that new web. And those are kind of the major blockchain verticals. And that's really what we are still, I think, trying to figure out who will be the winners in that space. Long term, there will be few winners. Currently, we have 1,600 cryptocurrencies or so traded on a daily basis. But in each of these verticals, there will be, a few, maybe a handful of winners. And I think we are still trying to figure out what kind of projects those are. So that is things like, obviously, money is a big one, store of value. That looks like it will be Bitcoin. We have smart contract platforms. We have Ethereum today, but we have new projects coming out, like Definity is one where we invested in. They will release something, a mainnet, maybe towards the end of this year. And then we have kind of things like DEXs. We can do decentralized exchanges using this technology. We will have projects around interoperability. We will have network commodities. These are kind of like the layer one, if you like, and that's where we're building a portfolio and diversifying in between those projects which we think are the most promising. And at the end of the day, it's all about network effect, right? Who will be the winners? But some of these projects come out with new technology, like Definity that I mentioned. They have a new consensus algorithm that is very different from something like EOS or Ethereum. So that's interesting for us. And then you will have a middleware, what I call a middleware layer as well. And we're investing in that as well. And there you have things like stable coins, you have oracles, maybe file storage, those kind of things. We are seeing a lot of interesting projects there as well. Stable coins, I think, is really, really exciting, actually. I think if you can create a decentralized stable coin that could really create adoption. And if you think about it, you have a smart contract, you have a stable coin, you can do lending, borrowing, you can do all kind of financial derivatives based on a more stable value. So we are seeing a lot of interesting projects in that area as an example.
So what's the, from your point, obviously you've got quite a bit going on with your analysts and with what you're doing on the insides of the fund to make your decisions and to keep it abreast of everything that's going on. What do you think at the moment? We talked about the price at the moment. I've been watching, I trade it, it's technical, that's the way I look at it. I had a wonderful signal I've been waiting for all year, as a matter of fact, and that was back, where was it, sort of mid-July is when I saw what I was looking for a clear reversal. Now, we saw that $2,000 move, or sorry, $2,500 move shoot up relatively quickly. And then since then, we've seen it just come straight back down. It's highly volatile right now. It seems that good buying, good price momentum is being met with very steep sell-offs, but there doesn't seem to be that much fundamentally changing. Is it because that we've just got so many participants in this space that aren't institutional quality investors, that they're not traditional traders and investors, that they actually just get spooked and just jump out without any real logic to it? Because it's, I was sort of thinking, what's holding us back right now? And all the news seems to be really good. All the actual things that are factual are fantastic. But what do you think's holding us back from price increasing with the good news and getting us back above 10,000? Because if we get above 10,000, I think the news starts to come back in and we do start to get a lot more attention and a lot more movement to the upside.
Yeah, I agree with you. The sentiment still seems quite negative. We got that ETF. SEC said that they are delaying the decision with the latest ETF to end of September, and I think that was it last week, and that brought the market down quite substantially. However, I think that decision should probably been expected, and it wasn't really that bad news if you think about it either.
No.
So I was a bit surprised to see the market react in that way, but I think there's a case to be made. Like if we have this kind of fairly good news and the market is still weak, the fundamental sentiment is still quite bad. We're still in the bear market, but I think sentiment, my experience from financial markets is that sentiment can really change quite quickly. I think definitely the catalysts is when these kind of products are coming live. So things like Nomura talking about creating institutional grade custody that will come live at some point. The ICE product, the backed, it will come live later this year. I believe we will have an ETF actually approved maybe even before the end of the year. So I think these are all kind of announcements that can change the sentiment in the market. It's really hard to know the timing of those events, but we are talking about months, I believe.
I'll tell you what is interesting as well. I think that people, again, you said you weren't really expecting to see the negative reaction from the SEC pushing back to September. Neither was I. But in saying that, it comes back to sort of my comment before about it being an irrational marketplace with a lot of people that aren't used to having things take a bit of time. I mean, everything in crypto happens so quickly that, pushing back a month, it's like, well, actually, they're trying to make a measured response. You'd rather than push it back a month and say, no, we're not doing it. The other thing to consider is the conversations that are being had. And if people just sort of focused not just on the conversation, but where the conversation's coming from and where it leads to. If the SEC is starting to talk about an ETF, they're only talking about it because there are businesses out there that are trying to set them up. Now, the way things work is that someone brings up an idea, they try it, they get knocked back, they try it some more, and they keep on trying until they get it right. The fact that we're talking about an ETF means to me we will definitely get ETFs, because again, the education for a number of people out there is that there is more than one ETF being put up there. There will be a lot more than one ETF available to the market. So the fact that conversation's happening means that we will eventually get there. Now, you don't just click your fingers, guys, and expect to have such a big event like an ETF be passed. It needs to be done properly. It is regulated. And once that happens, it will be very, very good. But don't freak out when they get knocked back, because they will. And you need to have somebody, like you were saying, the CBOE and ICE. These are two that are wonderfully positioned because they've got the background, they've got the places to have the products, and they've got a track record. And they know how to, more importantly, they know how to speak the language of the SEC. They know how to get through. It's you don't just put your hand up and hope what the Winklevoss brothers have started to do. Everyone's thinking, oh, they're the Winklevoss brothers, I'm going to get it. No way. You're much more likely to get it through ICE or the CBOE. I think people just need to relax a little bit and understand that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes here. This is not crypto anymore. It's crypto and traditional markets meshing together. It's a big step forward.
Exactly. I think it's quite amazing. Actually, we have players like CBOE, trying to get an ETF through, and I'm convinced we will have ETFs. We already have futures. We will have options markets and all that. We will have in if it's a year from now, but it will come, and with that will come institutional investors, and that's just a huge opportunity for the crypto space.
Exactly. So, is there anything else, Henrik, you'd like to touch on before we wrap it up at the moment, mate? Anything interesting in the space that you're looking at?
No, and then I think in addition we'll have a lot of projects got funded last year, and we'll have a lot of exciting launches coming up. We had something like Augur being launched a month ago, and the coming 12 months we will have a lot of interesting projects actually being launched. So things like Rootstock, a sidechain to Bitcoin, will be launched probably before the end of the year, giving Bitcoin basically smart contracts. We will have, as I mentioned before, things like Definity. We will have stable cryptocurrencies that are decentralized. All these things are being built, so that's really exciting.
A huge amount of exciting things happening in the space. Henrik, I appreciate it so much. Henrik from Apollo Capital, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time today, mate. I appreciate having a chat, and we just got to sit back and ride this wave, don't we, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone wants to learn more about what we do, you can check out apollocap.io. That's our website.
Apollocap.io, that's the one?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time, mate. We'll have a chat down the track when there's more to talk about, but I appreciate you having you on the show, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thanks, guys. Bye for now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Podcast. Check out tradercobb.com because experience matters.